So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to everyone. Thank you once again for being a little patient with us as we are letting people in. And so my name is Anna Gilbert Muhammad. I'm the Equity Director and Food Access Coordinator for NOFA Mass. And I'd like to welcome, for those, this may be your first workshop. For others, this may be one of several you've been to. But welcome once again to our NOFA Summer Conference. And welcome to tonight's workshop, Building Justice Through Food, the Future of Food in Mason Square, with Ibrahim Ali, our presenter tonight. I'm so excited to be presenting or to have him present tonight. He's got some wonderful information. So before we get started and dive in, we just have a few housekeeping things. First of all, we'd like to thank our sponsors, and we're so grateful to our sponsors for sponsoring this workshop and for all of our conference. They've been great. I'm not going to go through all of them. You're looking at our gold sponsors right now. Please go through your program book, go to their websites, patronize them. They've been wonderful supporters of NOFA and the Summer Conference. You're now looking at our silver sponsors. Once again, please go and check them out. We'd like to recognize that this land belonged to other people before we arrived. We are presenting, attending, and hosting this workshop from land that was and inhabited before European colonization. And we'd like you to take a moment and look and use this map. You see the link there, and I'll place this in the chat. So you can see in the region whose land this was originally. I am coming to you from Springfield, Massachusetts, where the Pocumtuck people live. It spread from Enfield, Connecticut at the border all the way into the Deerfield area of Western Mass. And Ibrahim Ali is going to talk a little bit more about the history here in Springfield, but take that time to look at your region and see what first world peoples are here and were here before us. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce Ibrahim Ali. He is the co-executive director of Gardening the Community in Springfield, and it's such an honor to be hosting for him tonight. And so Ibrahim, you can go ahead and take yourself off of mute and get started.
Cool. Thank you, Sister Anna. And I want to definitely send a shout to the whole NOFA organization. Most folks don't understand or realize that NOFA gave Gardening the Community a start or contributed to starting Gardening the Community with some of the local residents here back in 2002. And so NOFA, there wouldn't be a GTC without NOFA. And so we're very appreciative of the work that we've done with y'all in the past and continue to do. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that. And kind of began as Sister Anna started with this idea of land that we're currently kind of sitting on, and over the years how these changes and these things oftentimes being kind of directed or being focused to change the environment in ways that oftentimes the people who live in those environments don't necessarily agree with, or don't necessarily, or haven't had an opportunity to weigh in on those sorts of decisions. And so that's some of the things that we're going to be reflecting on. Now, I believe that Sister Anna is going to be able to take any questions, and I do have the chat thing up here. So we want to have some time toward the end to have those kind of discussions. Perhaps if the line of questioning fits, we can tackle those sorts of issues. Gardening the Community and Mason Square. So our city, Springfield, Massachusetts, was one of the earlier kind of places that was settled back in the day. And Mason Square in the city of Springfield has a very, unique sort of history. It's named after a man, a Black man, Primus Mason, who, after the Civil War, was able to work and acquire a certain amount of money that enabled him to purchase a great swath of land in Springfield. And part of his land is where our current farm store and our sites where we grow food, this was a part of his land, his space. And what he was able to do back in the day was assure that one of the things that would happen with some of the land that he eventually would sell to the city, that some of it would be used to house veterans from the wars that were being fought and that would be fought in the early 20th century. And so since that time, there's been a home for elderly folks that were in the Primus Mason building. So that's one of the kind of legacies that this gentleman had, a Black man. I went online today to look up a few things about Mason Square just to see if I can kind of grab any little tidbits that I think would be interesting to share. And one of the things that I found was a YouTube video that discussed some misappropriation of funds that was supposed to be utilized for Mason Square, but for some reason didn't find its way into really doing anything. So if it's possible, if we could watch that clip right now, Sister Ann, I'm not sure how we could do that, but if we could watch that clip very briefly, that'd be dope. I can't hear anything, yeah. Okay, technology, once again, gotta love it. Thank you to Microsoft and all the Apple people out there. You guys are doing a great job, and all the Zoom. So if you can, get an opportunity, maybe not now, but check that video out. Because what it details is that there was a couple $1 million that was supposed to be for Mason Square, supposed to be toward developing Mason Square. And that was in it looked like the early 80s. I don't know any of those people that was in the video. But what it detailed to me and what it says to me is that there's this idea that folks in the Mason Square area, you know, are responsible for their condition, the situation as it is, and as it has been for many, many decades, obviously, as you can see in those clips. Now, there's definitely been some, some community development organizations over the years that have brought some positive businesses and things of that into the community since that video was made. Like that building, the Mason Square building in and of itself has been, people have been living in there since like the late 80s. They kind of transformed that building. And I think there's some additional spending that's supposed to be happening there soon to kind of help fix those up. But the amount of money that is discussed in that video, and if you were to equate that money from 1980 money to right now, it's a significant amount of money that never saw any development, really, never saw the kind of things that perhaps would have been promised to the people in the community. And I can say, since moving back here from New York, that definitely, like over the years, I've noticed that there's been an influx of conversation about different things that were supposed to take place, but not really seeing the fruition, or the folks in the neighborhood, people live in Mason Square, have not really seen the results of a lot of these conversations that have been taking place over the years. And one of those things that's very alarming has been the lack of food options in the community. Sister Anna, if you could bring up that clip number 5, the picture of number 5. I just want to show people kind of the 3 different neighborhoods that are connected here, and how and why the neighborhood has been designated as a quote unquote food desert. And I'm gonna get into that term a little bit in a second, but I just would like to bring up that image number 5 so we can see exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about food in Mason Square. wonder if I can just. No, that's not gonna work. Okay.
Is that the one?
Yep, that's the one. So that's Mason Square, kind of that red bullseye. It's a bullseye. That bullseye there would be like kind of the middle of Mason Square. And we have three communities that are kind of bordering each other. One is the McKnight, one is the Old Hill, Bay, Upper Hill. And so as you can see, when you look, kind of dig down into this, this image here, what you do see is there's definitely food options. There's definitely places to buy food. But when you dig a little bit deeper, what you see is convenience store, some kind of sit down, whatever that is, fast food, pizza. What you don't see is you don't see like a full line grocery store. I would be very hard pressed if I was looking to, or if I needed to eat organic food at this present time when this map was made, there wouldn't be any options for you. In fact, none of these neighborhoods, as you can see in this map, would be able to satisfy an individual's needs, whether or not they wanted to have that happen or whether they were prescribed by a doctor to change their diet. These are the options that would be laid before them. And then again, you know, when you start thinking about the millions of dollars that was supposed to be invested in this community back in the 80s and how that would have made a big difference, perhaps, to some of the questions and why it is like this, those would be perhaps some of the reasons or some of the answers that, you know, somebody can dig a little bit deeper down into, I hope one day soon, to find out, well, what happened to the money? And if the decision was made to make these investments, why wasn't it fulfilled? The video talked about there was an audit. What happened to the audit? You know, this is back in the 80s. So, I mean, obviously the people are not responsible who are in office right now for what people did in the past, but there are some questions that perhaps, you know, have led to the type of conditions that we're talking about right now. So God in the community has always expressed this idea and a vision of trying to solve or contribute to solving what it is that this construction that we're looking at, what is the result of this construction in terms of the lack of grocery stores, the lack of organic produce. GTC has been invested in trying to solve this problem since it started in 2002. One of the first things that we were able to do is work with the concerned citizens of Mason Square to establish a farmer's market in this neighborhood. That farmer's market started, I want to say this was before I started with GTC. So my sense is that it must have started around 2007, 2006. And it was functional until about 2011, the Mason Square Farmers Market. A small contribution, a small attempt to try to solve the problems that we see here as far as like a lack of being able to purchase the type of produce that is necessary for people to sustain a good life and have a healthy lifestyle. Concerned Citizens of Mason Square was exactly what the title suggests. It was people who were concerned about the lack of organic produce, the lack of healthy food choices in the community. The folks got together and were able to establish a small, or every Saturday, establish a small contingent of farmers, which I must say, as someone that was a vendor, as GTC, we were a vendor in the market. And then for 1 year, I helped run the market. I could say it was very difficult to bring farmers into the Mason Square area. We had a hard time convincing people that not only was it worthwhile to spend your money here, and that the food was needed, but that, on a Saturday you could do a good amount of sales. And, there were a lot of kind of rumors, I want to say, floating around the farming community in certain respects that I was privy to get that information in terms of learning of why it was difficult for people to, want to be able to be vendors at the market at that time. Some of the things that people said was that you wouldn't make any money. And obviously, for some farmers, that was cool because they came in and they did make a good amount of money. For other folks, there was a concern that they would get robbed in the middle of the daytime at a farmer's market. There must be a whole contingent of robberies that didn't exist, but apparently did exist to some folks that would prevent them from wanting to sell at the market. And that's in addition to just trying to convince folks who might not necessarily know or be familiar with the farmer's market to try to open up their mind to the possibility of, that being a thing, Unfortunately, sometimes I think that people in Massachusetts can be thinking about things in the past. Like we're kind of very enamored of things that happened in the past. And so there's a sense of, people finding it difficult to want to make changes, I thought this is kind of a little off. I thought it was, this is a reflection of this is the fact that when they were building this casino downtown, one of the things that they wanted to make sure that happened was that all of the buildings around the casino would maintain the same look that it had like in 1920. So they were building this supposed to be new fancy casino, but they wanted the buildings everywhere around the casino to still look like 1920. Not really sure what the rationale is, but that's what I mean about clinging to the past. And so this farmers market, when it was running, was an attempt to cling to the past in the sense of introducing this idea of bringing the community together and having this discussion in this environment where we could discuss food and we could sell healthy products and things like that and bring farmers together. So in that sense, yeah, we were hearkening to the past, but it was always this idea in the back of everyone's head of looking toward the future, of looking toward the possibility of a full-scale supermarket and the potential for there to be things that in other cities and other neighborhoods is just commonplace, okay? Around 2011, the Mason Square Farmers Market decided to shut its doors. And we made a kind of a Hail Mary attempt to resurrect another market, which we kind of worked along with the Springfield Food Policy Council. It was very, very last minute. But we managed that season, I think 2011, 2012, to put together a little market. It wasn't in the same location, and it was on a busy street, but it was just not it was on State Street, which is like the main corridor. But what we found is that, being in that main corridor, people would drive by and they would see us there, and some people would beep and people would wave, but it wasn't always clear, perhaps, how to get to us, so people would drive by and, then they would drive by again and we have to kind of point them to, go this way, go that way. And so, we realized very quickly that this wasn't going to be something that was going to be able to be maintained. We were in the parking lot of what was going to be the future, another gas station in the neighborhood of Mason Square. And so they allowed us to kind of take over this parking lot. But again, we were very clear that this wasn't going to be able to be maintained. And eventually we're going to get kicked out of there because they were going to be building this gas station with a small kind of convenience store, another convenience kind of store situation. Although I will say the Springfield Food Policy Council were able to convince this particular chain of gas stations to try to get more healthier food into their stock, into the convenience store that they were building. So that we'll see how that works out. So we realized that this wasn't going to be sustainable, and we began to think about, well, what is it that would make us as an organization a little bit stronger in terms of what we wanted to see and happen, see and do concerning food and food access and food justice in the Mason Square area. And so we began to search and look for some land to purchase, more so with the idea of just thinking, okay, so if we can buy some land, maybe we can grow some food and we can create some space where we could have a farmer's market, and bring that vibe back, because we knew it was needed. And we began to look around the city to try to find something. And we found a space on Walnut Street. Sister Anna, if you could bring up slide number 4. I just want to give folks an aerial view of what it looked like prior to the purchase of the land that was owned by the city, fortunately. It wasn't privately owned, it was owned by the city. And so we took about 6 months. We worked with the Conway School in Conway, Mass. At least that's where they used to be, to develop a plan. And that plan initially, like I said, was just like, okay, we wanted to have some land to do some farming. We wanted to be able to do a farmer's market. And if we can create something that would keep us out of the rain, that'd be great. And that would be enough for us to maintain our market. We could grow food. We can invite a couple farmers to come. And, we would have been happy with that. So in this image, what we see is kind of what the lot looked like before. There was, if you see in that top right corner where it says Walnut Street and James Street, that big parking lot area, there was a house there, obviously. And wow, look at that. Well, I noticed this once again. There's also a boat. There was a boat on the land that was kind of just there. All that yellow and most of those bushes and the stuff separating the concrete, that parking lot, and the grass, those were like major, 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 major weeds. I mean, just horrible, horrible in terms of the size and the what we had to do to kind of remove those things. The cars, there was a couple of abandoned cars that were there. Some folks who were doing some illegal activities had a car there. We had to, let them know that they were going to be, they had to move their car. That was a thing. There's a couple willow trees, but this is what we were looking at. And it was owned by the city at the time. And what we did is like I said, we went to the Conway School. We came up with a plan. We got the neighborhood councils in that image before, where we had those 4 neighborhoods. Like each one of those neighborhoods has a neighborhood council that has some influence in terms of what they can suggest the city council to do in a particular neighborhood, right? So if someone wants to, create or do some sort of thing in a park or do some changes or suggest some things that could happen, they would approach the neighborhood council first and kind of win their support. And then perhaps if it was a bigger project and if it needed to go to the city council could then they would take into account what the suggestion would be made by the neighborhood council, and they would weigh that heavily. Now we could get into a whole, and I think it'd be important at some point to kind of detail, like, well, how did these neighborhood councils get formed and what was it like before, particularly as it relates to those images that we saw, or that video, I should say, regarding like the corruption in Mason Square, because that was prior to the neighborhood council's existence. And so there might be something to that you can, somebody could look into the future. But I digress a little bit. So this was the land as it was. And what we wanted to do is to, kind of do some work on this particular area to bring about some change in the neighborhood. Sister Anna, if you could bring up the video, I'm sorry, not the video, but the image for number 6. And what I'm gonna share with you here is an early rendering of the space that we did right before the construction was started. And so just to kind of fast forward a little bit, so once we decided that we wanted to purchase this land, and once we came up with a plan, what we presented before the city council, what we wanted to do. Eventually they said yes, because it's hard to say no to young people doing work and kind of wanting to be invested in their community. And I want to add that this image that you see here, the store, this is an image that was first created by one of the youth in our program who was studying to be an architect. And so she developed a early rendering of what it was that we wanted to see in terms of the farm store. And so the basis of what you see there came from her, who she was one of our young people that was in the program. Well, I'm looking at this photograph here. These people in the corner here, they were very young in this picture. And if they knew that I was showing this, they would probably be very upset with me. But they're not here, so they have no say, you know, so this is what it is. We presented, like I said, this to the city. We were able to kind of purchase this land and make this happen. And one of the things that, you know, that kind of led us to creating this type of space, because initially, like I was saying, like it wasn't this complicated, you know? We just wanted something to cover our heads. But what happened was is when we started to have conversations, not only amongst the staff and the youth, but the broader conversations with folks in the community, they wanted something nice. They wanted to see something that would be eye-catching. And the youth, they wanted to have a bathroom. They wanted to be able to you know, be protected from the elements. And having a bathroom requires you to have walls. You have walls and ceilings, then you have to get insulation, then you have to have lights and et cetera, heat. And so all of that is what led us to making, you know, led us to this design. And if you can switch to the image on number 8. This will show you what we're looking at today. All right. I got Sister Anna working today, boy. I got to give her extra. Thank you, Sister Anna. Okay, so this is the Walnut Street Farm Store, 2020. It's not a full shot, but what we do see here is the store that I have mentioned before. We have the greenhouse, we have some seating, although with the coronavirus and things like that happening, like we've had to kind of slow down with, you know, kind of having that aspect of the space be kind of utilized as much, but it's there. And so right now what we're doing in this particular store is we changed our, you know, our model of just wanting to do a farmer's market. And we decided that what we would do is, you know, kind of grow our own food, sell it in the farm store, continue to maintain the partnership that we have with the Next Bar Nova based out of Hadley, and continue our CSA. So they contribute toward that. So we're like kind of working with a farm in Hadley to make that happen. And we've been doing that for about 7 years now, running the CSA from our GTC, the youth. They run that CSA program, the farm share. And then because we have a space now, if you can see in the image, there's like some very colorful wall here with a lot of different colors right there. You might be able to see that vaguely in the middle of the image right there. Well, that's a cold storage. And what that allows us to do is purchase food from farms like all over and work with a distributor to work with local farms that we might not be able to kind of get out to or get their products from because they're a little bit out of our our range. But we're able to make those purchases and bring that food into our site and into the store, and of course into the community. And so this was what we wanted to see. This is the future of what we were looking at back in 2011, 2010, and when we were kind of outside at these farmers markets, and being hot in the summers, being freezing in the late fall, and still out there. I got to give it to the youth who were, kind of around during those times, that they maintained and they kept us, and they kept the community well fed, and they were very dedicated to assuring that this project that was started in 2002 was kind of continue to be able to maintain our mission of bringing healthy food into Mason Square community. There was a few kind of things that I was gonna throw into this mix here, but I figured with the time that we have left, I would wanna kind of open it up for any questions that people might have that we can address. Okay, so what am I looking at? How large is the space? So I would say it's probably a little under half an acre. And in addition to the other area that we have on Hancock Street, that probably brings us altogether maybe about a little bit over a half an acre of space that we're managing and working on kind of throughout the summers and the fall. That store and that greenhouse allows us to be a year-round program. So not only are we able to provide our young people with an opportunity to be involved with growing the food, marketing the food, running a store, running a CSA, delivering food, learning about why things are the way they are in terms of the problems with food access in Mason Square, Six Corners, but also they can be a part of the solution and an actionable kind of progressive way of not just, kind of brewing in our anger at the lack of food options, but they can actually be constructively contributing toward the solution for healthy food in our community. And I think that is a testament more to the work that we've been doing as an organization, and more importantly to the dedication that these young people have of wanting to show and prove that young people in Springfield are not to be pitied or not to be looked upon as just being a problem or criminals or whatever you want to, whatever the media wants to kind of portray them to be, but that these are young people that care a lot about the world. They're great critical thinkers. They're really, really dedicated to their community and their families and doing good. And this has been an important program for a good number of young people who have gone on to do great things throughout the country. So it says, how have you been? Okay, the question is, how have you been in the leadership the whole time since I haven't been in the leadership since 2002. In 2002, I was very far removed from what I'm doing right now. I was in a whole nother world doing a whole different sort of thing. I got involved with God in the community around 2010, 2009, I believe. And so now, so I've been doing it that long. The next question here says, how many paid staff? We have 2 full-time, 4 part-time staff. We have in the summertime, under normal conditions, we would have had about 25 young people working with us in the summer. Pretty much from the school year start to the school year ends, we have approximately 12 to 15 young people that would kind of stay on with us that the whole year, learning about like all of the things that I had already mentioned. So we're running year round, the store's open year round. All of the things I just mentioned present a number of challenges. We have a very dedicated young staff. Most of my staff is under the age of 24. Very inquisitive. They ask a lot of questions. They're incredibly dedicated, and they're all from the community. And that's how it's been. This has been GTC from the beginning has been very much about promoting these young people and putting them into this situation to help them grow and understand and be very real advocates for themselves and for their families. Okay, so it says, sounds like a wonderful project similar to the food project. Yes, absolutely. I think when Ruby Maddox and Betsy Connor and NOFA and Mr. Bates, Jeremy Bates, got together and decided to make this happen. The food project was a model that they were looking at and thinking about in terms of what was going to happen here in Springfield. So absolutely. In fact, we worked and we've done work with the food project a couple of times over the years, and they're a great organization. There's a question here that says, have you been busier since the COVID? I want to say yes. We definitely have been busier. When you say busier, I'm not sure if that's the right word. I would say that we've been busy in the sense that we've had to change how we did things to continue to provide the food that we're providing. As this COVID-19 situation began to ramp up and people were not clear as to what was going to happen. I mean, there was a time, I don't know if some of you remember this or not, but when this thing first started, the COVID-19 first started, like they projected all kind of numbers that were very dire. And it sounded like we were in like some serious trouble. And there was not a lot of answers to questions that people had in terms of how to maintain safety for people working in stores, for the people who are on what they say the quote unquote front line of this situation. Like how are they going to stay healthy? And what happens to them if they get sick? And when we have to close down, like where would the people get the food from? My staff, we were very clear. They were very clear from the beginning of this that they thought that it was important that we keep our doors open. And so we did everything that we could, and we stayed on top of the regulations and things that were taking place to assure that we could stay open. And so it's been challenging as each week goes by, like there's a new kind of situation that we would need to adjust to. I think that ourselves and the rest of the country have learned to adjust to what has been taking place. I think Massachusetts, when I look at and talk to other people around the country, I think we're doing obviously a little bit better than other places. But from what I can see, the COVID-19 is not going to be the thing that's going to end up causing the most damage. Although obviously, if you lost a loved one, like that's enough damage in your life for a lifetime of damage. So there's no comparison to that. But I think the bigger impact will be the economic impact that this has caused. And in that sense, what we're doing now in terms of being busy, I think that is just kind of slowly, that reality is starting to hit home to a lot of people. It's hitting home to us as being folks from the neighborhood. It's hitting home in terms of what people are able to really spend their money on. It's hitting home and it's becoming a lot realer. Even the workers themselves who are bringing our produce and doing the growing and doing the picking, because those people, without those folks, who are making the real value in the economy, as far as I'm concerned, the people who have been working through all of this, that's where the real value seems to be coming from in our economy. if something happens to them, we're in trouble. And so we're very grateful for those folks that are still doing that. We have to be kind of grateful and happy that our young people have been so dedicated to maintaining our ability to sell and grow the food. And so, yeah, we've been busy, but I think it's a positive busy in the sense that, we know what our mission is and we know how important it is that this food be maintained in our community. So we got another question here. Is this program for youth and who are blah, blah, blah. So our program is for upper middle school, right through high school. And usually we make opportunities for young people who are up into like their third year of college to kind of have a summer job if they're able to come back. And we've been able to maintain that for a number of years. We thought that it was important to not only kind of keep a connection with the young folks who would go away to college, or some would join the military or decided they want to work. And so, kind of giving them the opportunity to come back to Springfield for those that were away, for the youth that might be kind of out there hustling or juggling a couple of jobs. We wanted to, give them a little boost by providing these summer jobs and summer projects every summer. And so, so the program is and no, so it's we're not associated with any particular school at all. We're an independent group. We have to raise our own funds to kind of keep our doors open. We rely on the ability of our staff and our board to make good choices in terms of how we manage our funds and our funding and what we go after. And we have made kind of the necessary steps to keep the doors open. And been very hopefully we will continue to be fiscally responsible with how people trusting us that we're going to do what we say we're going to do, and maintain that. Okay, so we have another question here. How much collaboration is there with other food justice initiatives like Nuestras Raíces and beyond into greater regional network of food sovereignty? That's a good question. So over the years, we have worked with Nuestras for a few projects. Currently, we're not kind of tied with them in any particular way, which for me is unfortunate. I think that there needs to be, for a area like of this size, Western Massachusetts, and that doesn't include the whole Western Massachusetts, because we're really just talking about Hampden County in our case. That's not really like a big giant city, or not. It's not a big super giant area to kind of manage and maintain. And so I always felt, and I still feel right now, that there should be a closer ties with Holyoke and Chicopee. And I would say there's folks that are really kind of pushing toward that. But, and there's no competition between us as organizations. I just think that there hasn't been that many opportunities that have been presented to both groups that would make that kind of collaboration possible at the present time. We have done things in the past, and there's always kind of, places and things of that where we're sitting at the same table, but nothing on the forefront that I can speak of lately. So I'm hoping that will happen again. And as far as regional stuff and kind of statewide things, between myself and some of the other staff, as well as members of our board and our executive board chair, we're deeply involved with some of the statewide efforts that are made around food, and have made great contributions to that conversation. more than what I can mention here, just in terms of the time and what we're doing here. But if you want to look into it, I can definitely direct you to some folks and things like that that are happening that are actually really great. So we have a next question here. It says, local food sovereignty, has local food sovereignty like your project become part of the Black Lives Matter demands in the Springfield area? Myself, I can only speak for myself. I'm not speaking for GTC right now. But we are not necessarily affiliated with Black Lives Matter in any kind of official way. Although I support Black Lives Matter because I'm Black and I feel my life matters. So yeah, I definitely am down with that. But in a more serious sense, like, you know, there's things with food sovereignty and kind of the idea of Black Lives Matter and what it means for some folks, or what it means for other people, that can be kind of, there's some gray area there. You know, Black Lives Matter is not just this idea, but it's actually an organization that has, like, you know, funding, and it has like a lot of structure and what have you. And I don't necessarily, like, for myself, I don't necessarily like abide by their platform and all of what it is. And if you wanted to get more specific, for my personal understanding of things right now in 2020, I'm someone that more is leaning toward reparations for the indigenous Black community. I think that's a stronger kind of solution to some of the long-standing problems that have been plaguing the you know, Black African American community for these last 300-400 years that we've been in this land. And so I think it's time that that be a conversation that be introduced, or really kind of put a lot of weight into making that be a solution. However, you know, obviously food sovereignty, the folks at whoever is in Black Lives Matter and what they've been able to accomplish is very important. And, you know, we, you know, kind of would subscribe as an organization, and we do subscribe to supporting folks who are speaking that language of food sovereignty and justice for Black people. I think that's an easy kind of thing to sign on to. And it should be a part of everybody's vocabulary, especially right now. And moving forward, it shouldn't just be this, the vocabulary of this, of what's happening right now shouldn't be limited to this summer. It needs to be a vocabulary and a part of what we're doing on an ongoing basis until we are able to achieve the kind of justice that is well overdue. I see another question here. Okay, so this is just kind of some other.
I think, Ibrahim, we've run out of, here's a question.
Oh.
Are most of the folks use the store from the neighborhood?
I would say there's a great number of folks in the neighborhood that use the store and utilize the store. There's a number of folks from the city of Springfield that are members or that come to our store. I shouldn't say members, we're not a membership organization in terms of going to the store. But there's a lot of folks from just Springfield that come to the store. And then there's without a doubt, there's people who are, you know, who are not from the city of Springfield who come to the store. We don't have any kind of, at least not right now, we don't have any restrictions around those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, anybody can shop with us.
And if there's a question that we don't have in the chat, because I think we've exhausted those questions, I do invite folks, if you want to pose a question, we have some time left. Feel free to take yourself off of mute and go ahead and ask your question. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey, Anna. I just wanted to double check. You know, back Ibrahim said earlier that there were like 12 to 15. Well, there were like 2 full-time staff, 4 part-time staff, and then 12 to 15. Were they volunteers, or Ibrahim, are they part of that college group and high school group that comes back and forth and they get paid?
So we provide a stipend for the youth that work with us.
Okay.
So you know, and it's based on their grade. So if somebody starts with, usually, you know, the best case scenario is we get a young person that would kind of join the program in like the 8th grade. And then they would kind of, you know, stay with us. And every year the stipend would increase based on their willingness to take on more responsibility. And it really has to come from them. Like, we don't just, you know, we've described that program as a leadership development program at certain points in the past. And I think that what we have found is that we got to get young people to self-designate themselves to be leaders before we can just bestow that upon them. Like, they have to feel that, they have to claim it. And so as they are in the program and they learn more and they go to different events and they take part in the things that we do, whether it's lectures or going up to, you know, the 5 college area and you know, listening to Angela Davis or, you know, whatever it is that we're doing. Like, all of these different things that we do contribute to them really feeling confident about what they know and what they can talk about. And they'll self-designate. They'll let us know when they're ready to take on more leadership roles. And I think that that's what's worked for us. So yeah, so it's not, they volunteer when someone first joins the program. We ask them to volunteer for 3 days, only because within that 3 days, usually young people will be able to determine whether or not this is for them or it's not for them. Because some people get out there the first day and they feel that heat and they see the bugs and they see a worm and they're done. You know, other people, we can't get them out of the dirt. You know, we can't get them out of messing with the animals and trying to grow the food and you know, making mistakes and what have you. So, you know, it really it is dependent on the individual, but, you know, we try to encourage people to stay as long as they can, because that would make the biggest impact on them. It really helps us in terms of the contribution that they make. And in the long run, it really is important for their family and the community to be aware of what's happening with food in 2020.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for a really interesting presentation.
Thank you.
And to ask, well, one question, and then I see someone else has written in the chat the other question I wanted to ask. One of the things that I've always admired about the food project is they bring along the young people who get involved and then they become staffers. Have you been able to do that too?
Oh, yeah. That's pretty much the model that we've been operating under since the beginning, which is that our young folks are able to kind of continue on as they see fit. And we can, you know, we're both growing at the same time. I mean, they you know, it's like a ladder, what is it? Like a leadership ladder, for lack of a better word, that they themselves develop. I mean, like, we had it in our mind a number of years back of, you know, we thought that this is the way it should work. And what we do is, we're not a youth-led organization, but we're youth-based organization. So youth are very much involved with, like, all of the decisions that concern them. We kind of try our best to let them lead the way in terms of those decisions. And then we have some space for young people in our, you know, our leadership structure, which would mean our board. So young people serve on our board and are involved in that aspect of things too. And again, these are young people that are either chosen by the other young people to be on the board, or they're young people that have self-designated that they would like to serve in that way for the organization. So, you know, in that sense, yeah, we absolutely are able to kind of work with young people and have them kind of become staff. In fact, of the staff that I have right now, I would say all of them except for 2 were once young people in the program. And now one of them is the manager of our farm store. One of them is our youth manager. And one of them is the manager of our CSA.
And Ibrahim, I'm glad you ended on that note, because there was a question that came through concerning the CSA.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe the CSA model and who it reaches? And what are the long-term impacts you're able to measure because your program exists?
Oh, cool. An easy question. So what is our model? The model that we employ is, we have a farm in Hadley, next barn over. They are able to grow food in Hadley, which has, you know, amazing soil. I was a little skeptical, not skeptical, but I wasn't sure about the soil situation up there until I went a few weeks. And you know, again, I've heard these things over the years. And then a few weeks ago, I went up there to pick up some things at their farm, and I saw like there was a crust over the soil. So I was like, "How y'all gonna grow in this soil? It doesn't look so good." And she picked it up and she showed me like, well, you know, on the outside it was like this certain condition, but underneath it was as moist as you can stand, you know, so the plants just have a wonderful environment to grow. So anyway, so that's, so our model, we work with them, and they grow the food, they bring it to us. We set up we used to be able to set up like basically a farmer's market style of market style, and people would pick their food and then they would utilize it how they utilize it, and they would, you know, that's kind of the model that we use. Obviously that has had to change because of the COVID situation. Hopefully we'll be able to go back to that. Now what we do is we kind of pack up the bags for people in the CSA and give it to them. And who it reaches, I mean, like we're able to get a lot. I mean, we have a number of different organizations, a lot of individual residents who come to our site every Wednesday. Today was our pickup day, and tomorrow, and they pick up their produce. I would love to get back to the model that we used to have, where people could come and pick their own food, but we're just not there right now. And yes, and all of the food that is in the CSA that we try to bring in the store, the guideline is that it has to be organic, and at the very least, it has to be low spray. So I would say like 95% of the food that we sell in the store is of an organic quality. Sorry about that.
I don't know if you're seeing this question concerning where do you envision the organization in a few years in terms of food access, community well-being, and education?
Well, I think one of the things, and I'm gonna try to be quick because I know that question right there, and even the last one that was asked, I mean, we can go deep into those two things for a long time. So I would just say that, you know, what we have envisioned for the site is, and what we're trying to create in the Mason Square area, perhaps, is for lack of a better word, like a food hub, a place where people know that when you want to get organic produce, that's where you go, you know? And it needs to be a quick, you know, when the wheels are turning, when people begin to think about, well, I want to change my diet, you know, I want to get some fresh watermelon. Where can I get watermelon with seeds? You know what I mean? Like, where can I get peaches? Where can I get plums? Like, it's that season. We want the first thing that comes into mind to be, oh, Walnut Street. Let me go over there. And while they're there purchasing those products, they can see a flyer for, oh, we're doing a workshop on woodworking. We are doing a workshop on woodworking this Monday. But they'll see a flyer or something that says, hey, there's a workshop on you know, kind of woodworking. Like, let me check that out. I didn't realize that you guys are doing the snap. You're doing the hip. Oh, let me sign up let me see if I can, you know, learn more about that there. You know, people come by with flyers for their organization, the things they're trying to promote. So now, not only are we serving as a place to get food and healthy food, and you can learn about, you know, things that are related to food, but also like maybe you didn't know that that you can, you know, you can get an application, and we're not a community development organization, but, you know, you can learn about more than just food from coming to the store, because people bring flyers for other types of things related to education and well-being, as stated in the question, in our store. And so, you know, I think in the future, you know, we want to do more of that. We want to do more workshops, and we want to be able to expand perhaps into other food-related ventures, and be able to do that from our store on 200 Walnut.
And again, if there's anyone that would like to pose a question to Ibrahim, I'm just going to take a little commercial and bear witness as a community member who lives right around the corner, literally, from the Walnut Street Farm. I've been able to utilize that market, which is absolutely beautiful, as well as they've been a good partner to a smaller program NOFA has at Home City Housing with a group of youth. So they're also serving as that model in the city and in the region. Another question that's come through, Ibrahim, what has become of the youngsters who graduated from the program?
That is a super important question. That is the $1 million question. We have been making an attempt over the last actually this year, we had started to begin to go back into our files and, kind of contact some of those youth and to see what they were doing and to try to give them do a survey to see where they're at. Unfortunately, COVID-19 hit. The young person who was working on that project was from Western New England University, had to go back home. So they weren't really able to push that project forward as much as we would have liked. But we intend to find out exactly what you're talking about in that question. Now, we do know of what has happened to, at least I can speak on some of the youth that have been through the program since I've been there, and I kept tabs on them. And we, everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of the youth that still are in the city of Springfield, they stop by at least once a season to say what's up, to take a lot of jokes on my part and to look at my gray hair and to talk about me bad. But we stay in communication with them. And many of the youth who go away when they, many of them still have family here, they make it a point to come check us out. So we're able to kind of keep in communication with many of them. But we want to do something a little bit more formal and bring that information once we gather it and share that with the community. Because I think it is important that we kind of can see some of the longer term results of what impact we've had on some of the young people who've been through the program.
All right, and again, anyone that would like to ask a question directly, please feel free to take yourselves off of mute. We still have time.
Okay, another great question. Actually, okay, so I've definitely heard of that Mass Ave project in Buffalo. I think they might have been the people who hosted the mobile market conference about 2 years ago. Unfortunately I wasn't in the country at the time, so I missed it. But and they did intend to do another one this year, but obviously none of that took place. But yeah, that I have heard of that program for sure. And yeah, I'll look into a little bit more further to find out what they're doing. Thank you for reminding me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions out there? Don't be shy. We've got at least 25 minutes. So if there's more questions, feel free. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi. I was wondering if you offer workshops about preparing food or helping people access equipment that they might need for canning. That's something that we've been dealing with here. I live in Vermont. People who sometimes don't even have cookware, or they live in a room, and so it's difficult for them to use some of the food that the food shelf or food covers. We have some plots in the community garden, and we're growing food to give to the food shelf, but we know that sometimes people can't use the food without having access to better facilities.
Well, you brought up something that, that's kind of deep, actually, when you think about it. Is it enough to just give people the food?
No.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, they need to be able to do something with it, and they need to have the know-how of what to do with it. And I didn't think, yeah, they need to have the utensils to make that happen, you know what I mean? So prior to our current state of affairs, we did do a lot of food demos. We did a lot of food demos. In fact, you know, pretty much every Wednesday and every Saturday, and most Thursdays, we were doing some sort of food demo in conjunction at times with UMass. They had a couple of interns that would come down and help us with that, or be involved with us in that way. We had kind of done like some things with some chefs in the area who would come and do cooking food demos. We created like a booklet for recipes that utilizing a lot of the food that we are able to grow and sell and bring into the store. And so yeah, so all of that was happening. The part that you're talking about is very is unique. I've not heard that question put in that way before. Because yeah, I mean, you could have all the food that you want, but if there's no way to really cook it, then you're in trouble. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I can't really speak on that. You know, we've definitely made the assumption that people had the things that they needed to cook with, but that's not necessarily the case. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe we need to look in that a little bit deeper. I mean, we're doing this woodworking workshop with the intention of creating, what happened was a tree fell in our space.
Oh.
And so instead of just kind of making wood chips with the tree, we decided to try to see what we can create with what we have. And so the idea kind of was manifested where we're going to make some utensils and things like that out of the wood. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, that's an important question. I'm gonna have to think about that. That's gonna maybe open up some doors for me. So thank you.
Well, one of the reasons I know about this is because Bennington County, somebody did a study about food security there and discovered that was one of the biggest problems for those who don't have enough food or don't eat in the way that is best for their health, that they just really didn't have access or the knowledge about how to prepare a lot of foods.
Okay.
And so it seems that would be really a good direction to take, but you would need a facility where you could actually do that kind of thing, a kitchen.
So yes, I mean, so you're running into a problem that we've been having in our neighborhood for a long time, which is there's no commercial kitchen that people have access to where they can go and get busy and kind of develop whatever thing that they might want to develop. And perhaps one of the things that myself and our board chair have, me and her. Liz Ogilvie, we've had that discussion a number of times. It's in the back of our heads that at some point we're going to get this commercial kitchen in Springfield at some point. So that's been a goal of ours for a long time. And so, yeah, we want to contribute to whatever is going to need to take place to make that happen. So I'm hoping that, we'll be able to turn, kind of put our intention out there to do that, and that will yield some results sometime in the near future.
Another question, another two-part question. What led you, Ibrahim, to this path as a grower and educator, and were there farmers in your family?
Okay, so I will be honest, I definitely stumbled into this. I was not on the path of growing food. And as I know that in some aspect of my family, there must have been farmers. Only because I know that my father's family was from some area in rural Georgia, and I know they had to eat, so they were farming. I know on my mother's side of the family, they were also from a part, well, actually my grandmother was from Baltimore. And I know her people were also kind of traced their heritage back to, I think, Florida. So in both cases, they moved north. I know in the case of on my father's side of the family, I think his father's father, they came to the north out of a necessity because of something that he had did, and they needed to leave like immediately, or there was an opportunity that he would have been dead, and then there would have been no Mr. Ali, and the kids would be suffering as we know them to be suffering. But, but luckily, those decisions that were made by those early people in my family, they moved us north into New York City and into Springfield, respectively, as far as what I know. So yeah, my background had, definitely was not into farming. The closest thing I had farming in my previous experience was when I lived in the Bronx, is I grew some couple of herbs on our windowsill. And then the fire escape, and I wasn't supposed to do that. People would, I got in trouble, not in trouble, but I got scolded for having a few things on our fire escape. And now that when I think back about it, it probably wasn't the right thing to do. It was the fire escape, But that was the closest thing that I had to growing anything back in the day. But I can't stress this enough, like, once you get involved with growing food, it definitely becomes a part of your DNA. Like certain things are just awoken that you did not know were there before. And being involved with this organization has led me to a lot of great places and a lot of incredible people. I've been out to Growing Power when it was in existence a number of times, and I was able to meet with Will Allen and really have some great conversations with him and his staff. I was able to go to Cuba. We've been all over the country in terms of, whether it's California and working with and kind of learning about what folks were doing in Oakland, down to Baltimore and other places like that. So, I've made some incredible connections and some lifelong friends from being involved in this work. And I think that, this is something that I'll probably will be a part of me and my family for as long as I'm around doing this work. So it's been an incredible journey.
I don't know if you can see this question, yeah, Ibrahim, but this is concerning funding. Are you looking to become totally funded without grants? If so, what do you think needs to take place in order for the self-funding to happen?
Yeah. So that's an important kind of part of the equation. That's an important piece, a big part of the puzzle is like, and it has gotten a lot of organizations like ours in trouble over the years because of this dependency that we have had with, kind of needing the type of money that's required to run an organization like ours or like other places around the country. So one thing that has to happen is, we want to be able to build up a donor base or, because I don't know if it will ever be enough in terms of the size of the place that we have, what we're able to bring in. I'm not so sure that it would be sufficient to pay for the staff that we have and pay for the young people to work to get the stipend. Most of the funding that comes in goes toward, assuring that we have the people in place that keep things moving. And so, at the same time, when you do write grants and things of that nature, many of them they're not just like open grants. They don't just give you $10,000 and say, here, you use this as you want to use it. A lot of the times, people create these opportunities for grants, and they have a mission that they want to see their money used for. We're funding this type of thing. If you can apply to this grant and you can fulfill the requirements that we have, in our foundation or whatever, or somebody who gave the money, if you can kind of fulfill those requirements, then yeah, you can have this money and we can blah, blah, blah. And that's good, I suppose. I'm not so sure how sustainable that is in terms of what's happening now and moving forward, and the changes that are very necessary that need to be made, maybe perhaps on our level in terms of how we ask, but also in terms of how people are given the money. These bigger foundations, these grant-making agencies, they also need to change and adjust to what's happening on the ground, and be aware and culturally aware of what needs to happen.
Why
and
would your kids need a green light debit card?
The trust that we have, that we're building with the community, and how that relates to kind of receiving funding in a way that allows the groups to determine what that money is going to be used for. So I think one of the things that needs to happen definitely is, and I'm speaking about us, but I'm also about other organizations, is trying to make sure that, we get those folks from the community involved with the organization, by donating money. In some cases, not necessarily in our case, but definitely in some cases, in some situations for us, donating their time, their energy, and their mind to assuring that we can exist and continue to exist. Because without the financial part of it, a lot of this stuff doesn't work. And that's just the reality. And our community, because of the things that have happened, in addition to what that video that you saw that that we couldn't necessarily hear, but that I hope you can listen to later after this is over, take that to heart. Listen to that. Listen to the problem that was happening in the early 80s with funding that was supposed to be going into the Mason Square community that never happened. And if you kind of multiply that by generations of redlining, generations of Jim Crow, you can see that there's a lot of issues in terms of just having money and having wealth that have nothing to do with how we can work as hard as we want, but there's a real reality and there's a real wall when it comes to wealth and money in this country that hasn't been correctly dealt with. And when we have a current situation that we have now, where our government, federal government, decides to give $5-10 trillion in 1 week to a number of corporations, but the people of our country are kind of ignored. We have there's an important paradigm shift that is taking place and that's going to need to take place in order to see some changes around the economic sphere, or we're in trouble as a nation. We are in serious trouble as a nation if that doesn't get addressed. So I think at the moment I have to leave it at that. But yeah, I agree with you. There's some things that we need to do to kind of make some important financial changes around how we're going to keep our doors open.
In the remaining minutes, as we come to a close, and this has been such a wonderful conversation and discussion, Ibrahim, do you have any closing remarks, anything you want to leave folks with, any asks you want to make?
I would, yeah. So I want to thank everybody for sitting through this presentation. Again, I want to thank Sister Anna for assisting and running the show. NOFA again for continuing their mission of trying to make people aware of the importance of organic food and eating, and for NOFA for being open to kind of changing and some of the things that how they've looked at this, for lack of a better, I want to say diversity issues, but it's not really diversity issues. It's about stepping into the reality of 2020. 2019, 2018, people of color, Black folks, and getting them involved with NOFA. I think that's very important. We are open a lot, Wednesday through Saturday, 200 Walnut Street. Please come, stop by, wear a mask. We could have some, depending on when you come, if you want to get like a brief kind of tour or whatever, we can accommodate that. And I just want to let people know that in Springfield, there's a lot of great work happening around food. There's a lot of young people that are very dedicated to the things that they're doing. in our group, in the group that Sister Anna's running, and some of the groups that we might not even know about, and young people who are just doing things in their community that we might not even know about. And I think that that is what I'm very, very hopeful about, is that these young people and our elders, will begin. And that's one of the most, not to kind of dwell on this or kind of run this thing over, but one of the most important things that has happened a lot more so now because of more so in the past, not so much now because we're kind of keeping social distancing and all that. But one of the most important things that I see and that I've seen is that the young people that are in our program are able to interact with our elders in the community in very real ways, because we're growing food, and a lot of the older folks remember growing food with their grandparents, with their parents, visiting down south, visiting, going back to Puerto Rico, going back to the Dominican, going to Cuba, going to Haiti, and they'll come back with these images and these things in their mind, and then they'll come to Springfield and they'll see our young people out there. And I can see, there's times when there'll be like people walking by and they'll stop and they'll just stare at the young people. This sounds very creepy, but they'll come and they'll stand there and they're like, they'll really be like admiring what they're doing. And they'll ask us, hey, come over here. And we'll sit down and we'll stand there and we'll have like a conversation with them for 20 minutes, half hour, just about food and growing food and, what they used to do back in the day with their grandparents and how much they missed, being able to be in touch with the earth like that. And so, at times, with funders and things like that, like folks want to know, like, how much food did you grow and how many, how much pounds and this, that, and the other. But I can tell you some of the most important things that we've been able to do is being able to make those very, very, very simple conversations and connections with people from the neighborhood. And there's no way to measure that. There's no way to measure the impact that somebody driving by or walking by, when they see these young people working, when they see the food that's growing, we don't always want to measure. We always can't quantify what impact that has, And I don't necessarily, as one of the directors, I don't necessarily always want to have to ask every single person that comes to the store, that comes and walks by, and we have that come in. Hey, could you take this survey and let's measure this, and let's have let me record you now. Like sometimes, like you gotta be in the moment. And I can tell you that has happened so many times, and we've really been able to make a strong connection. Our young people are able to really make these strong connections with people in the neighborhood and in the community based on just them walking by and being in that communication with people at a time when it seems as though most people don't even know their neighbors, But I can tell you that our young people are changing that paradigm. They're changing this lack of empathy and this lack of love that we have for each other, and they're increasing that in ways that are immeasurable. And so I think it's very important that be said, and that that we kind of continue that work.
Wow. Well, as we come to the close of such a wonderful workshop, Ibrahim, if folks want to come by, if they want to reach out to you with questions, what's the best way for them to contact you?
You can go to our website, gtcspringfield.org. That's gtcspringfield.org. And you can reach out to, there's an email contact there. We're on all of those social platforms, those time-killing platforms like Facebook and Instagram and some of these other things. I see a very detailed letter here, and I can't address that right now because I know we got to get off, but I am going to read it. And if you, Elizabeth Henderson, want to continue that conversation at some point, please come on over to our site on Walnut, and we can have, we can kind of get deeper into this. There seems to be a couple of things that are very interesting, and I would like to learn more about that. Do that.
And you mentioned a woodworking class coming up for those in the region and the area. When is that?
Yeah, it's for it's a woodworking workshop that kind of making use of this tree that fell down, as well as some of the walnut tree that we trimmed. Making use of those limbs and that stuff that fell. And so every Monday throughout August, We have some folks coming to the site that are going to be doing some workshops around like how to utilize these pieces of wood that normally would just be chopped up, you know, into wood chips.
Okay. And that letter that Elizabeth Henderson put in the chat, she's also sent it to me. So if you are interested, you can email me at Anna@NOFAMass, NOFAMASS.org, and I can get that to you. Ibrahim, thank you. This was such a wonderful workshop. It's such an honor and a pleasure to do this with Ibrahim. He has really inspired a lot of the work that I'm currently doing right now within both within and without NOFA, and I appreciate everything that GTC has done, is doing. As we round out our evening, there were a couple of links I just put in the chat to remind folks as the conference continues. Don't forget to visit with our vendors. They do have some great products. The link is there. One of the vendors, Vision, I think it's Vision Projects, they have a lot of books, and they are featuring Leah Penniman's book, Farming While Black. You have got to get that book.
We're in too, by the way, GTC.
They are in there, so you especially now have to get that book.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah, you got to get it. So please visit that vendor page. The Teacup Rally, a lot of the money that's collected goes to scholarships. We've had a few youth that have taken advantage of the scholarship. One might be on now from Home City Housing. So please, check that. I put that link in, so check that out as well. So as we close out for tonight, again, I want to thank everyone. Thank you for taking the time with us. We will be back on the air Friday night with another workshop track, and then Saturday afternoon starting at 4 p.m. So please stay tuned. Join us again. Have a great night. Thank you so much.